Whoa, sorry about that. Man, I was having some problems with the audio here. Still trying to figure out the live stream business. It is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. It's pretty complicated, actually. The Facebook Live broadcasting is so much easier, so I might end up using that more. But anyway, what I was saying, you couldn't hear me earlier. Is that I'm going to be coloring this poster art here in Clip Studio Paint, also known as Manga Studio 5. And I just want to walk you through the process. While I'm working, if you have any questions for me or comments, please just post them there and I will try my best to answer them. Hey, what's up, Lich King? Thanks for joining. Let's see. Let's get started. So, the first thing that I do after drawing the line art, of course, is I do a very, very quick color mock-up, which basically means I just take the line art and on another layer I experiment with colors. And so you can see here I didn't pay any attention to staying within the lines or anything like that. That's not the point. The point was just to experiment with different backgrounds and different colors. And this was the third one that I did. So I did two others, and I didn't like the first two. The third one I really liked. Each of those only took, maybe 5 minutes. I started doing this a while back, and what I found was it really, really helps me pick better colors because I don't feel as committed to them when I'm just doing these quick little sketches. What happens if I skip this step is I start laying down colors that then the rest of the piece has to follow. But if it was the wrong color in the first place, the foundation is kind of shaky and the whole thing falls apart. So, the other cool thing is that with Clip Studio Paint, you can use this sub-view palette here. And I just saved that color mock-up as a JPEG and loaded it in here. And now I kind of have my own palette to select from. So whenever I hover over here, you can see that the cursor turns to a eyedropper tool. So a lot of the hard part is actually taken care of. Now I just get to sit down and start coloring. So what I've done is I had a flats layer made. And whoops, those are my experiments. So here's the flats layer underneath my line art. This is all the different shapes filled in. And the whole purpose of this is that I can make really quick selections. Alright, so let me show you what I mean. I'm going to turn on this little lighthouse icon on the flats layer. And we're just going to make a duplicate of this. Turn the lighthouse off there. And I'm just going to fill this whole layer with some kind of neutral color. Now, when I get my magic wand tool out, I'm going to select the reference layer preset. And what that's going to do is when I'm clicking here, let's say on his eye, it's going to pull from information on this flats layer underneath. So it's just going to make a selection of the eyeball. And what that allows me to do is very, very, very quickly go through and pump in some color. So let's go. I'm just first going to block this whole thing in. And let me grab, sometimes I use the wand, but sometimes you can also just use the paint bucket with the reference fill on. So let's go here. Hey, hello from America. Again, for people just joining, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. I'd be happy to entertain them. And I'll give you a long, rambling answer. Actually wanted that to be pink. So this part here is not going to be real exciting. I am just basically blocking in the colors so that when I start adding details and everything, it's a lot easier. Hey, thanks, Mark Warren. Thanks for buying the brushes. I really appreciate it. Hey, Johnny, what's up? While I'm working on this, just filling in the colors, this process is kind of boring. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the videos I plan on making in the near future. I've got a whole list of things that I really want to get to. I want to talk more in my videos, less about art instruction and more about just the business of freelancing, because I find it really fascinating, and it's something that I've become kind of obsessed with, So I want to make a video very soon about pricing, how to price freelance artwork, what kind of best practices to use to get really the highest fee for your artwork that you can, how to negotiate, how to write quotes, that kind of thing. Because if there is one mystery in this whole business, it's what to charge. I've talked to probably literally hundreds of different artists, and you'd be surprised. Even artists that you think are at a hugely high level are still struggling with this. They have books out there and things that supposedly give you pricing information, but in the markets that I work in, which is like a lot of t-shirt design and stuff like that, there's hardly any information. Oh, hey, thanks for all these questions. Let's see. Do you use a small tablet connected to your computer? So my setup, and actually if you go to my website, I have a frequently asked questions section that kind of walks you through the setup that I have. I'm using an iMac, and that is hooked up to the Cintiq 24 HD. So I've got a 27-inch monitor and basically the 24-inch monitor that I draw on. And that's so essential, because I always have reference material open up on the second screen. I'm a heavy reference user, so I can't. For example, I used to have the Cintiq Companion, the smaller 13-inch version, and I had a lot of trouble with that because the only screen that you have is the screen that you're drawing on. So that kind of bummed me out. Actually, I ended up selling that because I just didn't use it. Now, when choosing colors, I like to use a lot of the same colors from around the canvas to kind of give it a little bit of harmony. But later on, I'm probably going to change the color or the value of some of these things. Hey, Jan Christian. Hey, thanks for the business, buddy. I've thought a lot about Twitch. I keep getting recommendations for that, so I'd like to give it a try. I just wonder, the last time I looked, they didn't have a whole lot of artists on there, mostly for video games, so I didn't know if it's something that actually might produce some results or not. The cool thing about YouTube is I already have a base of followers on here, so I believe that they're notified every time I upload something, which is handy. If I went to Twitch, I'm basically starting from scratch again. The question is, how long have I been freelancing? This month it'll be 5 years. So before that, I had a full-time job at a book publisher, and then before that, I had a full-time job at a motorcycle graphics place. I always freelanced on the side, but 5 years ago, I decided to business was good enough that I decided to quit and do this full-time, and it's been fantastic. And that's another thing I plan on making some videos on. I want to make a video kind of showing people my journey as a freelancer and what things worked and what things didn't, because there's been lots of really good things that happened, and there's been a lot of mistakes I've made too. So I want to talk about those in an honest way. I have a question. Do you draw on the tablet from Apple or just on a tablet other companies? If you check out my website in the frequently asked questions section, I got a list of the hardware I use. So I was just saying I use a Wacom. Oh, someone else answered. Thank you. The Wacom Cintiq 24 HD. Highly recommend Wacom stuff. Like I think it's the best. All right, cool. So now that I've got like the base colors down, and for this piece, I really wanted to use insanely bright, like almost sort of 80s blacklight colors. So this is a great base for me, and I'm going to start now by doing the shadows. And to do that, I usually just set up a new layer and set it to multiply. And then I grab a color that is almost gray but has a little bit of blue in it, and almost white, like it's just very, very light. And then I'll grab one of my brushes, usually this brush here that I made, this expressive brush here. And I'll just do a little test. There we go. Alright, so now what I'm going to be doing is switching back and forth between the wand tool and the brush tool. So right now I have all of the green, or all of the plants selected, so I can just very quickly make big strokes without worrying about hitting the other colors. And I'm just going to turn up the tip feel. When I'm inking on my Wacom tablet, I like to have the pressure sensitivity turned up a bit so that you have to press a little harder. I find that allows me to get a lot more variation in the line. Hey, and thank you. Let's see, I missed the question here. Richard, thank you for buying my brushes. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you're aware, but I did release a second volume in November. So that's been out for a few months. I've had pretty good feedback on that one. I want to try to do some Photoshop brushes too if I get a chance. But honestly, I really don't use Photoshop much anymore for coloring or drawing, just because I just love Manga Studio so much. There's a comment here about using blending modes and how they couldn't get them to work. they're definitely something you got to experiment with. Like with this multiply, I find that you gotta choose the right color for it really to work. Um, and a lot of times they can produce some unexpected results. But they're really powerful if you can figure them out. And if you're familiar with Photoshop, they basically have all the same blending modes. Some are kind of different with different names, but they're essentially the same. So here, when I'm going to do the shadows to the gums, I know that I'm going to want a cooler blue, probably. Yeah, so that way the shadow isn't just we don't want to paint with gray shadows, because all shadows have some kind of color in them. We want something that works with the color we've already laid down. And obviously here with this piece, it's not like we're going for a realistic rendering. Hey, to answer Grunge Puppy's question here, yeah, I normally try to change the color with when I'm coloring different areas. If I'm going for a more realistic look, then generally I keep the shadows sort of the same color, which ends up usually being like a light purple blue. But in this case, it's a cartoonish piece, so I want the shadows to these yellow teeth to be like a kind of orange, dirty yellow. I want the shadows to the purple gums to be a darker purple. When we get to the lips here, I know that I'm going to want that to be kind of a reddish color. If this wasn't a cartoonish piece, then obviously you make different choices, because the colors aren't going to be that bright. It's going to look unrealistic. So like here with this orange, what I typically do is I eyedropper tool the orange, and then we'll move it to red a bit. And if we do that, that looks great, but it's way too dark, so I'll just move it probably like that. There we go. So, Znort Designs, that's a cool name. When you say, the question is that you struggle with creating depth, and if I have any suggestions. That's a real hard thing to answer, I guess, verbally, but probably what you want to do is, if you're not planning out your piece as a foreground, midground, background, that may be where you want to start. And there are lots of rules out there that you can look up where it'll help you understand what colors you should use for backgrounds, what colors you should use for midground and foreground pieces, and or pieces of the illustration rather. And in this case, I chose to make the background lighter in value. That way it will kind of recede. The darker colors will come forward, and also much duller. So the plant and the toilet, everything there is going to be brighter and like a darker value, and that will stick out from the background. The other thing too is you may notice with the background, it's all going to be done in just different shades of kind of grayish blue. I'm not going to add a lot of color variation to it because that will also distract your eye to look at that. I don't want that. I want the plant and the toilet and maybe this rat to stand out. So you might want to take that approach when you're trying to create depth, is just identify what your foreground element is, and in that one, pump all the contrast, pump all the color. Anyway, there's that. And what I'm going to do later, I always start with basically these hard edge shadows. You know, I like that in my style. I think it creates a lot of detail and a lot of interesting things to look at. Once we've laid those down, I'm going to go back in and add some gradients to it, and then add some texture so that it doesn't look quite as vectorish, I guess. Is not really a word, but you know what I'm saying, I hope. And you can see it. I keep experimenting with different colors because I'm not real sure yet what to do here. Yeah. There we go. Another thing I'll probably do with this piece when I'm all done is, I have some textured paper images that I'll probably overlay over the whole thing, and that kind of helps give it a little less, a little more of an organic look. But you can't overdo it, just a little bit. Hey, Dillinger 2006. Manga Studio is awesome for t-shirt design because, let me show you. They allow you to draw with brushes that are aliased. You see how these, I'm zooming in a lot, you see how it's like these harsh black and white, or 100% pixels, right? It looks really gross when you zoom in. When you zoom out, you can't see them at all. What Photoshop does, they do have the option to paint with with aliasing if you use the pencil tool. But I find that the pencil tool is just not as responsive as this. But what that does to be able to paint with such a hard edge is it makes color separation so much easier, because there's no, often if you take two colors that are on top of each other and you have an anti-aliased edge, which is a little bit, it's like a softer edge. If you have that and then you try to knock those colors out from each other, you can sometimes get like this white ghosting in between, because the pixels are not exactly 100%. Some of them are sort of half there, if that makes sense. There's a lot of other reasons that I prefer Manga Studio. And actually, if you haven't checked it out, there's a long video on my channel called What Manga Studio Does Better Than Photoshop. So I would definitely check that out. There's lots of little features that are very cool. You know, and if anyone asks a question and I miss it, just feel free to ask it again and maybe just put it all in all caps, because it's kind of tricky to be drawing and looking up at this little screen at the same time. So I probably have missed a couple things. Sorry about that. All right. Alright, I've got a question here that says, when I work in manga, the brushstroke of final image always looks a bit smaller than in the canvas. Why is that? Let's see. I'm having trouble figuring out what you mean by that. If you don't mind trying to clarify, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Every once in a while, it's important to look down into our color study just to make sure we're on the right track. Znort Designs, how much time does it take to finish a piece? That depends a lot on what it is, obviously, but most of the artwork that I work on takes anywhere from, I'd say, like 6 to 8 hours typically. There's some projects that take longer than that. Sometimes logo designs can take longer if we have to go through a lot of drafts and things like that. This piece here, man, I should have been timing it. Maybe 6 hours. Coloring it today is going to take a lot longer than it would, just because when I'm talking in front of an audience, like I tend to get lost a little bit, and sort of just slow down. And I'm trying to show off too, so that doesn't help. Oh shoot, I'm getting some feedback that the audio is off. Did that just happen? Let me try to fix it. Hey, I've tried, I changed my microphone to my internal microphone. Can anybody clarify if this sounds better or worse? That's too bad. I got to check that out. I got this nice microphone, and I've noticed that it will work fine for a while, and then all of a sudden that echo comes in. So I'm not. That's a bummer. It wasn't cheap, so I'm not sure what's going on there. This is why I just get paid to draw pictures, people. I don't know about this other stuff. Yeah, it could be the software. This is only the second time I've broadcast on YouTube, and I don't know if you guys have ever done it, but it's way more complicated than Facebook Live. On Facebook Live, you get the Facebook app and you just hit go live, and that's it. With YouTube, you have to have an encoding software running in the background. So I downloaded something, and maybe I need to look into something different. I think you have to do the same thing with Twitch too. So I'm not sure what the right option is there. Hey, Keith E., can you talk about ideation? Do you usually work off clients' ideas or come up with your own? Um, when I first started freelancing, it was basically my job was to do whatever work I could get. And if a client wanted me to draw something that I didn't want to draw, it didn't matter because I needed that job so bad. I didn't even know I had a choice, right? Over time, as my portfolio got better and stronger, I noticed a shift where instead of people hiring me and saying, hey, can you draw me something like this guy? They would say instead, like, hey, I love this from your portfolio. Can you do something like this or in this style or whatnot? So when that started happening, uh, I made a huge leap, I think, in skill level and what I was able to charge and basically just general enjoyment too. So I wish I had figured that out earlier, actually, because I drew a heck of a lot of stuff that I don't want to talk about. Um, but as far as who comes up with the ideas, the clients almost always have something. Sometimes they think they have more of an idea than they really do. But the first step that I always go through is I will come up with some really quick thumbnail sketches and present them to them. So each thumbnail sketch may only take 15, 20 minutes, and most of the work is just describing the idea. So if they give me an idea that I don't necessarily like, I'll usually draw what they ask for in a thumbnail. But then I will also draw my own idea, which I secretly hope they pick because I think it's better and stronger. And actually, normally they do. Sometimes they don't, and that's all right too. This is my job. So nobody has a job where they get to do exactly what they want to do all the time. With this case, in this piece, this is a commission for somebody. I don't end up doing a lot of commissions, but I'm really enjoying this because there's hardly any pressure. This guy just hired me because he liked my art and he wanted to see what I could do. But his instructions were very specific. He was the one who wanted the guitar this very specific guitar in this creature's mouth. He wanted the creature coming out of the toilet. He wanted a rat, you know. So this is actually probably an example of something that is about as specific as it gets. I usually don't have directions that precise, you know. And that would, I don't know if I would prefer that if it happened all the time, but it's sometimes kind of refreshing to do a piece like that, because when I know exactly what I'm supposed to be drawing, I don't have to spend so much time on the concept. I can just really kind of spend more time just doing the actual drawing, you know. But of course, there's still a lot of work just figuring out a layout that will work. You know, most clients that'll hire you, they don't really have like a visual muscle. That's why they're hiring you, right? So they may have a list of 40 things and not understand that there's usually no way to get all those things into the same field of view, you know? But this guy's been great to work with. Let's see, I probably missed a bunch of questions on that ramble there. Do I prefer freelancing over a risk-free, steady job? So I mentioned this earlier. I'm going to definitely make a video just about my journey freelancing and what I've taken away from it. The answer is absolutely I prefer it for a lot of reasons. I mean, one, well, it's hard to say this without sounding like a jerk, but for me, the money is way, way, way better. Because at my old job, I had a salary, and that salary, that was the maximum I could make, period, you know. Now, it's almost limitless. Well, that's not true. The limit is me. The limit is how much time I have. But we've been able to do much better than we were before. You know, we're able to put money into retirement, into our house, into the kids' college education, and before that, I thought I was contributing to retirement, but you know, that was almost a joke, really. The second part of it is, for really the first time in my professional life, I really am getting to draw the things I want to draw. And what I didn't realize was that if you're constantly having to change your own style, it really hinders your development. So I worked these other jobs for 8 years, and my artwork was all right. But as soon as I quit, like it was like every year was just a huge, huge jump. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. I mean, one is just the motivation, obviously, because now that it was my full-time job, if I don't do a good job, then we don't eat, you know? So there's really no choice in the matter. But beyond that, I think I just was able to just follow my instincts, I guess, a lot more. Shoot, man. Thank you so much for all the questions, guys. I know I'm missing a ton of them. I'll have to come back later. But just one last thing about the question, do I prefer freelancing? The other thing I just love is just being able to go on vacation when we want. If there's a sick kid, it's not something we got to juggle our schedule around. Just not having to go to meetings. In my old job, we had so many meetings. Actually, we probably didn't even have so many. It's just one meeting is too many meetings. There are definitely things that I do miss, of course, and I'll try to get into that in another video. So let's see. Could you show some thumbnails? Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. Let me show you the thumbnails that led to this piece. If I remember right, though, I think I only did one thumbnail for this. Usually I do 2 or 3. But in this case, I think the design, I don't think I could even think of a different way to lay this design out. So I think we only did one, and I just crossed my fingers. Okay, yeah, here, I found it. So if you look here, I don't know how well you can see this, but this was just a really rough sketch I did in Manga Studio. And I kept the foreground like in this blue pencil and then the background in red, only to make it easier for the client to see what I was thinking, right? This actually is even probably more detailed than I normally go with thumbnails. But I think with this, I was just having a lot of fun. And then this was the piece that you're seeing me color now. So the next step was the ink. I normally do like a detailed pencil drawing in between that, and I did that first. So I took this sketch and I drew over it in pencil, or digital pencil anyway, and then I inked it. I don't think I ever showed the client the digital pencil stage because I really just wanted for him to see the inks, and I knew that he was a really easy client to work with. Like, he's very easygoing and was real happy with this. So there's that. All right, so I'm gonna start doing a bit of the background, and I'm gonna use some of the splatter brushes I created. If any of you guys are using Manga Studio, I do sell brushes on my website if you want to check it out. If you don't, that's also cool. Sorry for the commercial. Let's see. So for the background, I'm going to take a much different approach to coloring it. I'm not going to do those hard lines that I've been doing for all the other details. I want to give it a much softer look. That way the foreground elements really pop out. And because I don't want to, I don't want to be here all day, and neither do you. Hey, Johnny, you asked how many sketches do you present to the client. I answered that a few minutes ago. It can be anywhere from just 1 to 3, or if we're doing a logo, sometimes we go through so many sketches. I'm working on a logo right now for a guy, and I label each sketch, sketch A, sketch B, sketch C. So we made it to Z, and I don't normally go that far. I have a certain number of revisions in my contracts. Hopefully we're going to figure this out soon because it's not going well. But that's pretty rare. For logo design, we can normally hit it in 3 or 4 sketches. Hey, what color mode do I work in? That's a really good question. It depends on what the final product is. So if I'm doing a t-shirt design, I almost always just work in RGB. Most color separators prefer that. If I'm doing something for printing, for a magazine or something, brochure, something of that nature, then you have to work in, you don't have to, but you tend to want to work in CMYK. And this used to be I used to worry about that a lot more, but this, the iMac screen is so much better at matching colors, and since I use the Adobe suite to modify colors, the Creative suite will keep all of the color profiles consistent. I used to have many more problems where if I did it in RGB and they wanted in CMYK, it would look drastically different. But that just doesn't seem to be as much of a problem as it used to be. And I don't know if it's just the technology is better. I'm not real sure what's going on. But luckily for me, I don't have to worry about color management too much because most of what I do is either for t-shirts or it's for the web or some other kind of digital production. All right, cool. So now that I'm happy with the shadows, then I'll go in and I mixed a couple things. Almost forgot to color the condom. Come on, Disney, hire me, man. I'm the best at drawing disgusting used condoms on the ground. Johnny, what resolution do I usually work in? That also, and I know I use this answer a lot, but that varies a lot on what I'm actually doing. You want to, of course, always have your final piece to be at least 300 DPI. That, of course, is extremely important. When I'm inking, I usually work in 400 to 600 DPI, and I found that the higher DPI, for whatever reason, gives you more variation in your line work. I have no idea why this is, but in order to have that happen, you have to have a fairly fast machine. So if you try inking at 600 DPI and it's slowing your whole machine down, then it's really probably not that important. Right now I'm working at 400 DPI, and really the only reason is just because I forgot to change it to 300. I normally color at 300, but it's not slowing my machine down or anything, so there's no reason to change it. And I'm working at full size, so this is an 11 by 17 document. That's what we're going to print it at, so that's what I'm working at. All right, for the background, I was just planning on using, let me just do a couple things in the background before I start painting the highlights. But I was just going to use some like splatter brushes and stuff. Where are they? Here we go. And this is a great way to make the piece seem like you did a lot more work on it than you did. Because time is money. Oh, you may notice that when I make a selection, my marquee dots always disappear. I have a keyboard shortcut to hide them, so I don't like to color with those things in my face. It's distracting, so I just turn them on and off. But the selections are still there. If anybody has any questions that I missed, this would be a great time to go ahead and ask those. Do I put every element on a different layer? So that's a great question, and I know a lot of artists who do work that way. I will sometimes do that depending on what I'm working on, but for me, it gets incredibly confusing. So I almost never do that. If you look at my layers, here's what I've got. I've got the ink layer. Let's turn that off. I've got the shadows, and then I've got the colors. So right now what we're working on is 3 layers, and I'm actually, when I start painting the highlights, which I think will be right now, I'm actually just going to merge the shadows down, because I want to be able to paint over the shadows, because the highlights are the things that highlights knock out shadows. You know, if you shine a light on something, it pushes the shadow away. It makes a shadow. So in most of my pieces, you're really only looking at a couple layers. You've got the inks, you've got the colors underneath, and then if I need to paint over the inks, I'll have a layer above that. So before I go into the highlights, I forgot that I wanted to actually color some of the line art on this piece. I think it makes it look less like a coloring book. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I've got my line art layer right here, and I'm going to start a new layer above and click these little circles so that it conforms to the line art. And let's do the teeth. What I want to do is get a color that's still really dark, but not black. So if it's yellow, I'm going to use a dark red, and we're just going to try this out. Yeah, I think this will work. So I'm going to go in and use my lasso fill tool. And this is kind of time consuming, but I think it's worth it. I'm going to select items that would be bright and shiny. So normally teeth are generally pretty shiny, at least if you take care of them. Like this guy. All right, so you see what we're doing here. Now, if I were using a vector program, this might be simpler because I could just select these lines and color them. But I hate working in vector. I just hate it. Hate it. But I have to do it every once in a while. Oh, so Snort, you're asking me, how do I create a selection of an object? I have a video on my channel that explains that. It's called how to flat an image, or how to color flats. If I turn off my color layer, which is right here, you'll see that in flat colors with no gradients, we've already colored every element. So I've colored the eye, I've colored the lips, I've colored the teeth, colored the guitar. Every piece has been colored in a different color. And these are very random colors. It didn't matter what they looked like because this is hidden. And what you do is you turn on this lighthouse icon and use the wand tool as a... well, I'm not going to go into detail because I did explain this in another video if you want to check it out, but it's basically set to select from this flats layer. So when you see me do this, what was I doing here? If I wanted to color the eye, I just click the eye, and that selection is already made for me, even though I've already started painting on the eye. It's awesome. That's one reason that I really prefer this versus Photoshop, because with Photoshop, I would have to constantly switch back and forth between those layers. And now, I can stay on the same layer the whole time. All I'm doing is just quickly changing tools. And since I've got those on a keyboard shortcut, it's so quick. It's great. I love it. Whoops. You got me on the wrong layer, man. Hey, Keith. So how do you hide the marquee dots, the marching ants? I get that question all the time, and it's so easy. You just go to View, Selection Border, and turn it on and off. I have it set to a keyboard that if I hit Command colon, then it will turn it on and off. So I have a little joystick here, like a gamepad that I use. So just basically with the flick of my thumb, I can turn them on and off. So like here's a selection. Now, if you're going to color in parts of your line art, it's best to do it before you start painting in highlights, because you want to make sure, maybe even before you start painting shadows, because you want to make sure that you don't do all this work and then color the line art in a way that gets hidden or clashes with the other colors. Alright, so then like this creature, I think I want to be a different color. I think. Let's try it out. Whoops. Yeah. The other thing I noticed about coloring your line art is it is a bit tedious, and it does seem to take more time, but when you do it, it actually gives you the ability to not have to do much other coloring work, because by doing that, this thing already looks fairly finished, and I'm just going to have to add a few highlights to it. Ugh, all these teeth. So this works especially well with liquids. So what I normally do with liquid is instead of a black outline, we can do almost a white. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Nice. Dude, is this pee? This is disgusting, man. Hey, what's hell confusion? Hey, but I want to try to make one every year. That's about how long it takes for me to get the ideas together and test them all out and put them together. So if you find that maybe some of these packs are missing something, please let me know. I'd love to know what brushes to work on next. Now we're not going to color, I think I already said this, but we're not going to color all the line art. We're basically just choosing what elements we want to highlight. As I said, in this case, I want to choose the elements that might typically be shiny. So that might be as far as I go. We've got the teeth. Yeah. Other than that, one trick to make your backgrounds recede and create depth is to color that line art instead of black, like a dark blue or something. So let's get dark blue and see how this looks. Yeah, so let's go with that, and it's going to be super subtle. You might not even be able to see it actually on your screen, but that's it's looking good on this one, trust me. All right, cool. So let's just go, I'm going to go right, there's a few things that have not been colored, but I'm just going to get them in the highlighting stage. So let's do that now. I'm going to put my work on another layer. I'm later going to condense that layer, but for right now, I like to keep it separate just in case I make a mistake. And let's see, let's go with, I have this tasty shading brush that I like. It's kind of like a chalk. What's going on here? All right, basically what I'm doing here, it might be hard to see, but I'm just creating some lasso cuts for the areas that I think would have a highlight. And then I'm switching to my brush, which is sort of like this, I'll zoom in real close, it's sort of this grungy brush here, and just doing a comic book airbrush technique like that. This is another area where we're not going to do this everywhere. It's basically just the elements that we want to highlight. Ah, my shift key is like sticking. Performance anxiety. Hey, Znort Designs, if you've got some comments, sure, you can send me an email. If you think they're appropriate to talk about here, that's cool too. I'd be happy. It might be easier to just talk about them now. Oops. I got a lot of work to do on this guitar. I'm skipping it because I'm not sure how to handle it. If I'm not sure about something, I usually just I start with the stuff that I know how I'm going to approach. Because often what happens is maybe it turns out I don't even need to render it very much, or I can just pull from other colors. So let's get this toilet monster. I appreciate everyone who's watching and making comments. I'd love to do this more, like try to get on a schedule, maybe do it every week or every other week or something. Is Friday typically a good day to do this? I figured Friday is always my day where I save sort of the easy thing, or like the thing I don't really have to think about to work on, just so I can wind down the week. I figured other people might be in that same mindset. Damn it. The trouble with picking a good time is for the obvious reason that there's so many different time zones that, do I broadcast in the evening? Do I broadcast it in the afternoon? I'm on the East Coast, so it's the afternoon here, but I might be missing a lot of people who are, waking up, or they're going out to party. I don't know. There's no perfect time, really. I've had some clients in Australia, and trying to get a call arranged with them is tricky, because it's a different day over there. I think they're a day ahead in some over sometimes. So I've had to take calls like real late in the evening or real early in the morning. It's tricky. I don't know how they do it. Hey, that's interesting, Jan Christian. I didn't realize that a lot of people don't have school on Friday. So that sucks. In America, we have school every Friday. I'm getting gypped, man. So it's probably hard to see on a small YouTube screen, so let me zoom in. This grunge brush I'm using is so much fun because rather than a soft airbrush, it kind of creates like a really irregular edge like this. And when that's printed, it really, I don't know, it makes it feel more like a piece of organic art. I love it. So this has been my style for a while now. I still use kind of the traditional comic book cut and gradient style, but I use a grungy brush to add texture. We gotta color this rat. He's lost. I gotta do the nails. Hey, hello from Australia. If you do any business with people in America, I don't know who you are or what you do, but is that tricky? I mean, you must have to twist and turn to meet other people's schedules, especially because us Americans, like we don't any country that's not us, like we don't get or we don't understand or take the time to learn about. So, like one of my clients, I think he did a lot of business in America, but he lives in Australia. So I think he just totally adjusted his schedule. So he would keep Eastern or Western, yeah, well, he would keep West Coast hours. So everybody else would be asleep and he'd be at work. I've heard of people in Japan doing the same thing. It's nuts. That's devotion. So one thing I want to talk real quick about is just color choices, right? This is something that I've just been developing over a long, long period of time. I don't have kind of a cheat sheet or a formula for it or rules that I follow. I just know that a color that sort of goes well with pink is kind of a yellow. Um, I guess I couldn't even explain why that is exactly. I know I'm sure that I know there's a reason for it, um, but to me, it looks a lot better than just coloring it with bright pink. Because if you do it too monochromatic, it sort of kills the vibrancy of the piece. I don't know, especially when we're working with something cartoonish like this. I can see here, so I got to color this purple line art here real quick. That will keep the talons black, of course, because they would be really dark. I'm just curious: is anyone here listening a full-time freelancer? I'm just curious what most of you guys are. Are you students or working full time somewhere, experimenting with art? Do I have any full time freelancers watching? Yeah, I'll have to check out your website. Or I think you said you were going to send me an email. Is that right, Snort? Right now, sometimes what I like to do is instead of using the brush tool, I use this lasso fill tool, which is an awesome way of just sort of very quickly creating some really weird, irregular shapes. Uh, it's awesome. And basically, it's just like using the lasso tool and then filling, only it's so much quicker because you're taking out that step of having to fill it. This is a black rose. The client wanted a black rose, and again, I said at the beginning, this client was very specific in what he wanted, which is sort of rare, but I'm guessing that there's lots of symbolism here that I'm not even aware of. But that can be fun to work with, because my style of artwork, I really like to have a lot of detail. So the more things, like a list of things, for me, produces a better result. Also takes a heck of a lot longer, which is a shame, but it's the path I chose. Here's a technique I've been using a little bit, where I will lay down some flat colors like that really quick with the lasso fill tool, and then just get out the smudge, the fingertip tool, and just go like this. Sometimes for background elements that need to be a little more out of focus, it's a cool way to just get some color down. All right, cool. So I still got to do this guitar, which I don't want to do. And then really the last step is I got to do the rat, but I just have to go in and do like the specular highlights, which is fun and really easy to do. So let's do the rat. This guy needs some pink claws here. Oops. I want to do these as like a gradual fade to the purple. A rat's ear is pink? I don't know. Probably. Hey, Indie Spiv, I hope I'm saying that right. That's cool that you do music full time. That's not easy to do. So hats off there. I know we probably go through similar struggles. Another thing I really, really love about Manga Studio is that they have brushes that actually blend with the other colors. So right now I'm using a chalk brush that I think I got from Ray Frienden, and it works awesome. It's really easy to kind of fade from a really hard edge to a soft edge, and to blend things together. and the colors underneath. It's very cool. Yeah, good eye. So this book here, it's funny. The client actually wants this book by Charles Bukowski. I've heard all kinds of good things about this author, but I've never read him. So I have the book here. What I'm going to do is later do some things to it in Photoshop so it blends better with the illustration, right? I don't want it to stick out too much, but actually having that is kind of cool. It sort of creates a different texture in the piece, but definitely gonna have to do some things so it fits. All right, let's wrap this up, right? My God. All right. All right, cool. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to choose, before I do the specular highlights, because that's one of the last things, I'm going to get out a brush with glow dodge turned on, and I'm going to try adding some color variations here. That's too harsh. Let me see if we do the screen. Not sure about that. That might work better. All right, I got a hairbrush in here somewhere. All right. Hey, my kids are going to be home in about 15 minutes, so I want to wrap up this video pretty soon. If anybody had any other questions, I'd love to answer them. So just please shoot them this way, and I'll see what I can cook up. For the highlights now, what I like to do is paint these above the line art layer, because there are some times when I want to actually just draw over the line art. And I just have an ink brush, the same brush that I use to ink, and I'm just going to put in some real hard highlights on a different layer. Hey, Tony, I appreciate it. Thanks. And thanks for picking up the brushes. Hey, I'm just curious. Is there anything that anybody would like to see a video of? I have a pretty big list of things that I want to make a video of when I have the chance, but there might be something I'm missing. Maybe something they haven't been able to figure out. Um, Jack, to answer your question, how long have I been doing this? I've been doing the freelancing full time for 5 years. And before that, I was working at a book publisher as an artist for 7 years, and then before that, I worked for a decal place for 1 year. So add that all up. That's like 14. Let's see. Was it 1 year? Yeah, close. Yeah, it's like close to 14 years because I had another thing before that, but. It's a long time. I'm going to be 35 this month, so I don't think I qualify for spring chicken status anymore. Um, but I don't get any discounts for being old yet, so I'm not quite there. So when you're doing these little specular highlights, you don't want to go crazy with them. You just want to figure out, okay, what are the points that you want to jump out? What are the points that are closer to the viewer? So I'm going to put a few white highlights on a few of the teeth, just these ones that are closer here. Same with the lips. We want to do things like here, but nowhere else. And only the things that would be wet or shiny are going to get these types of highlights. These gums, definitely. And the shinier and wetter the object, the more contrast you're going to want to use on the highlight color. Hey, Queen Nayoka. So how does the wand tool work? Well, I've got a video on how to create flats that you might want to check out because I talk about the wand tool. It works very similar to Photoshop, only the awesome difference is that there's way more customization. You can have the wand tool expand its selection automatically. You can have it close gaps, which is fantastic because in Photoshop, it's like when you use the wand tool, if the area you're trying to select isn't completely closed in, forget about it. It's going to pour out into the other areas, which is frustrating. Oh yeah, also something to watch out for when you're doing these types of highlights is you do not want to use straight white very much. I used it only in a couple places, like in the teeth, because that's the brightest spot. All right, what do we got? I'm still avoiding that guitar. I do not want to do that guitar. Hey, Indie Spiff. Yes, about that. About your question is you should create a video about color separation and setting up for T-shirts. Absolutely plan on doing this. I've been planning on doing that for a long time. It's just to do videos like that. Unfortunately, just takes so much time out of my schedule that it's really, really hard to make it happen. But definitely plan on doing it. I think I'm most likely am going to do it as a like a really advanced tutorial on Skillshare, which is a site you can go to and download tutorials. But the things that I've learned over time have been helped greatly by Manga Studio, just because it makes things so much easier. And I'll explain all that. I'm going to do this. This condom needs to be a different color for the line art. Because since it would be plastic, you know, so it's not going to be that dark. There we go. Nice. All right. On these pools of water, I'm going to do almost a white jagged highlight right here. Water with question marks, I guess. We don't know what that is. Don't forget about the joint. All right, so I guess last call. Any final questions before I go? I probably need to sign off in a second here. All right, great. Well, I guess I just want to thank everybody who was watching and commenting. I'm going to try to do these a lot more. It's just I'm trying to get everything figured out. But I really appreciate it. I'll go back through the comments and see if there's something that I missed to see if I can help you out. But if you use Manga Studio, please check out my my custom brushes that I sell on my website, flylanddesigns.com. And subscribe to my channel if you like this stuff. So thanks a lot. Have a great weekend. And now for the awkward part where I try to figure out how to turn this off. Here we go.